Now before you say anything, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Yeko, this really seems like a great use of your time and resources. And I would agree, but as it turns out, a lot of this game actually revolves around killing things. Disturbing, I know. Just a quick disclaimer before we get into the video, this was all recorded back in 2020 on the WoW Classic Vanilla servers, and not the Classic TBC servers. Just wanted to have that said to avoid any confusion. Now let's get started. There's only 3 rules to this challenge. Rule number 1, I cannot injure any mobs whatsoever. Rule number 2, I cannot be in a group with someone who's not following the first rule. And third rule is no repeat quests. Starting off with Nordshire Valley, there really isn't too much I can do here. There's only 2 short introduction quests and then a final quest near the exit that leads you over to Goldshire. I then went over to the Dwarf starting zone, but turns out the only quest I was able to do there at level 1 was the Karanau's delivery quest. So that only leaves me with the Night Elf starting zone, but problem is, it's kind of on the other side of the world. But it's not like I was just gonna give up 10 minutes into this challenge, so I started making my way over there and I'm just f***ing with you, I took a mage portal. Once I arrived in Shadowglen, I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of quests I was able to do here. Granted, most of them were short introduction quests that didn't award a lot of XP, but it was still a lot more than the other 2 zones. But after finishing my last quest in Shadowglen, it was time for me to turn to my second method of gaining XP, which, as you might have guessed, is going to be exploring. I explored all of Teldrassil and Elven Forest, which was enough to get me to level 3 so I could start questing again. And you might be wondering why I waited until now to turn into Goldshire quest. The reason why is because at the time I was under the impression that quests with red difficulty levels would give less XP than those with yellow. But turns out this is not the case at all, and all quests will give you the exact same amount of XP regardless of difficulty level, with the exception of grey quests. But for the time being, you're gonna see me run back and forth a lot for this exact reason, because I was trying to avoid the red quests. I went back over to the Dwarf starting zone, and now that I was a bit higher level, there were some quests I was able to do here. Not as many as Shadowglen, but overall the XP might have actually been better here. By far, the worst starting zone was the human one, which makes sense if you think about it, because most of the quests in there are killing quests. The rest of Elven Forest, however, is actually pretty good, but before getting into it, I wanted to explore the other starting zones first. And by other, I of course mean the Horde starting zones, because even though we can't do any quests there, we still want the XP we get from exploring them. Problem is, I don't want to cross any other zones on my way there, because unlike with questing, your level actually does matter when it comes to exploration XP. If you're not within 5 levels of the intended level of the zone, then you will gain less XP for exploring it. After a bit of swimming, I finally arrived in Durotar. The local residents didn't seem to approve of me, but luckily I did have my Jordans on me. I explored all of Durotar, including Orgrimmar. I then went over to Mulgore through the Barrens. And lastly, Trisfold Glades, which was actually pretty easy to get to, because at the time a lot of people were selling summons outside of Scarlet Monastery. I then went over to Stormwind, which I actually hadn't been to yet, and there's 3 low level quests that I can do here. You're actually able to do them as early as level 1, I believe. The only reason I hadn't done them yet is because I kinda forgot about them. So it's a good thing I caught up on them, because if I had waited 1 more level, I'm pretty sure they would have turned grey and I would have lost out on that XP. And it's not like they give a lot of XP, but in a challenge like this, I'm gonna need everything I can get. In fact, let's take a minute to talk about the types of quests in this game, because most of them tend to fall into one of 4 categories. The first one is the killing quests, which obviously I can't do. Secondly, we have the collect quests, where you're usually looting items off mobs, oftentimes some type of animal parts. And some of these quests I actually am able to do, because not all of these items are bind on pickup, meaning I can buy them off the auction house. And then we have travel quests, which usually have you running from one NPC to another, and they don't offer a lot of XP, they're more just kind of meant to guide you in the direction of the next quest hub. And lastly, we have gathering quests, where you're looting items off the ground. Usually there's a lot of mobs around that get in your way, so oftentimes I would need to have someone come and clear out the mobs for me beforehand, which is not against the rules as long as I'm not grouped with them. Now, there does of course exist quests outside of these. There is escort quests, for example, but I would say about 80% or so fit into one of these 4 categories. And it's gonna get repetitive and boring to see the same type of quests over and over again, so I'm gonna focus talking about the ones that stick out in one way or another. Like profession quests, for example, and I'm about to do my first one, although this one is not particularly exciting. All you have to do is hand him some spider legs. What is a little bit interesting about this quest though is that it's the only profession quest in the game that you can do at level 1 profession skill. So the next time you level a night elf, don't forget to pick up cooking for a free quest. There was also a quest I could do in Durotar, which is the gathering quest from the goblin outside of Orgrimmar. Which I guess makes sense if you think about it, because goblins are meant to be faction neutral. But at this point I'm gonna start speeding up the footage, at least on the parts that aren't particularly interesting, because otherwise this video would be over an hour long, and I thought a lot about how I wanted to edit this video. At first I was thinking of just doing big jump cuts and speaking briefly about each zone, but I wanted all of the quests included in the video. That way there is some degree of evidence to the fact that I did in fact do this entire run without any mob XP whatsoever, so that every time my XP bar moves you'll be able to see the reason why, with the exception of exploration, because I didn't want to include all of the footage of me running around in all the different zones, because even sped up, that would be really boring to watch. Instead, I will just include a small clip of me exploring the last area of each zone whenever they happen. And we're at level 10 now, which is the point where your leveling speed tends to slow down quite a lot. But I'm still doing okay for now, because even though I'm not able to do the majority of the quests in any given area, the fact that I can do quests in all 3 of the starting zones more than make up for that fact. But soon enough I'm gonna run out of quests in these zones, and I will have to rely on 1 or 2 zones at a time to get me through multiple levels. That's why it's important I do all the quests I possibly can, including the profession quests. Most of these quests will unlock once you have reached a certain milestone within the profession, such as reaching level 50 or 100. Most of the quests will also have a character level requirement, and so doing all of them and doing them at a time when they're still relevant to you can get a little bit tricky, since you can only have 2 main professions at any given time. Luckily though, through some clever planning, I was able to do all of them without ever having to re-level the same profession. And this is when I did my first escort quest, and yes, these quests do usually have mobs spawn during them, but as long as I'm not the one killing them and I'm not grouped with that person, I'm fine. I'm sure to some of you this feels like cheating, but the truth is, if I wasn't doing this, then I wouldn't really get anywhere with this challenge. And I'm doing the first couple of quests in Darkshore right now, as you can see, but I will come back to this zone later, so I'll say my thoughts about it until then. For now, we're going to head back to Westfall to do the Captain Sanders quest chain. If you're not familiar with this quest, it starts from a map that drops from the Murlocs in this zone. There's a lot of items like this in the game that starts a quest, but what's interesting about this one is that it's one of the very few that is not bind on pickup. The XP is really good, and the chain itself is really simple. You just run around Westfall clicking different objects. And after that I figured it was as good a time as any to go explore Silverpine Forest. This zone was a bit of a headache because there's no alliance graveyard in the entirety of the zone, meaning that if you die you have to run all the way from South Shore, even if you die at the very top of the zone, which did happen to me more than once. Next up is the first class quest. Now, I had no idea if Paladin was going to be the best class for this. I just kinda picked Paladin because it's my go-to class, but it worked out pretty well, and I had a lot of quests that I was able to do, and most of them gave pretty good XP. This first class quest is the one you do to learn Resurrection. Most of the quests in this chain take place in Stormwind, and I was able to do all of them except for the very last one because it requires you to kill some Defias mages. After that, I finished off the quest I had left in Loch Modan and Westfall. I realized I haven't really talked about Loch Modan at all, but there really isn't much to talk about. It's a decent zone in terms of XP, but the quests themselves are pretty generic and boring, at least the ones that I'm able to do within this challenge. But now that I was level 14, it was a good time to go back to Darkshore. There's a lot to like about this zone. It has a ton of quests, and a lot of them are fairly unique, like the scrying quests or this quest that has you capture a rabid bear. But more importantly for me is that most of the quests in this zone does not directly require you to kill any mobs. And yes, it is still implied that you're supposed to be killing mobs, like with the 3 different escort quests, or the quest that has you collect mushrooms in a cave that's absolutely packed with mobs. But the important thing is that the actual quest objective does not require me to. And this was around the time that I realized that quest XP is not impacted by the quest difficulty. So from this point on, you're gonna see me stick to one zone for as long as I can, as long as there are quests that I can do. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Some of the quests in this zone were the worst I have ever done, and I would never in a million years think of doing them if it weren't for this challenge. And I am of course talking about fishing quests. There's actually 3 of them in this zone, and I don't think I've ever been so bored in my entire life. And I swear to God, if any of you smartasses comment some dumb shit like it's not a pacifist run cause I killed a fish, I'm gonna hunt you down and I'm gonna force you to watch the unedited footage of me fishing for 30 minutes. Listen, I know I said I was gonna make it to the raid tonight, but I'm kinda busy right now. I just got some... Anyway, after finishing up the last couple of quests in Darkshore, I was now halfway to level 16, and this is where things are gonna start getting a little bit more difficult. I picked up all the quests I could in Ratchet, which for now is only 3. One of them is the One of them is the
Samoflange
quest chain, which unfortunately we're only able to do the first 2 quests of, and neither of them award a lot of XP. Another quest takes you over to Stone Talon Mountains to collect some spider eggs. I also took the time to explore the zone while I was there. And the last one is a herbalism quest, and you need level 50 herbalism to unlock it. Once you have the quest, all you have to do is run around and collect low level herbs, and the quest items will drop off the herbs themselves. I did 2 more profession quests after this, one for blacksmithing and one for leatherworking, where basically you just have to craft some items and turn them in. It's kind of a shame that they didn't do more with the profession quests in this game. I mean, first of all, it kind of feels like they don't even want you to find the quests. Like, how would you even know that you unlock a new herbalism quest at level 50 in Ratchet of all places, especially if you're Alliance? It would have made so much more sense for you to be able to pick up these quests from any of your profession trainers, which is pretty much what they did with class quests, so I don't see why they couldn't have done the same for profession quests. It would have been a great way to encourage people to level their professions as they level their character, which is something I feel like most people just don't do nowadays. Although, if we're being honest, people don't really seem to be leveling their characters either, but that's a discussion for another time. Also did the donation of wool quests. Most of you are probably familiar with these. There's 4 different hand-ins, 1 for each race. A lot of people use them as a quick way to gain reputation, but they do also offer some XP. After that, I went back to Loch Modan, cause I had unlocked another quest there. This is the last quest we can do in this zone, except for a short paladin quest later on. I then got started on Redridge Mountains, and one fun fact about this zone is that the Hillary Necklace quest is actually doable on Horde as well. It's the quest where you help some kids find a lost necklace. I'm actually not 100% sure this works for vanilla, but I do remember doing this in TBC. Overall, there's not too many quests we can do here. This zone has a lot of collect quests, but unfortunately most of the items are bound on pickup. Unlike Westfall, where pretty much all the collect quests were doable. I also got started on Ashenvale, but I'm still only level 17, so I don't have access to most of the quests here still. Also had a handful of quests in Stone Talon Mountains, which was enough to get me to level 18. Did a few quests in Wetlands, but just like with Ashenvale, we still haven't unlocked most of the quests in this zone. Luckily for me though, the Fire Festival was going on at the time, and event quests are great because they usually try to be inclusive to all levels, which means I usually have at least a couple of quests that I'm able to do, and there's almost no event quest that requires you to kill any mobs. And the Fire Festival is one of the best events for me because I'm able to do almost all of the quests and some of them award a lot of XP. Probably because they weren't actually intended to be done at low level. Also got started on the Duskwood quests, and once I hit level 19 I figured it was as good a time as any to do the Warstone Gulch quest. All you have to do is turn in 3 marks of honor, which means 1 win or 3 losses if you're playing Alliance. And I guess technically it wouldn't be against the rules for me to kill some Horde players, but like a true pacifist, I decided to spare them. Also, they're all 19 twinks and I have no weapon. This quest is repeatable and the repeats do give XP, but like I said in the beginning, we're not doing repeat quests for this challenge. I finished up the Fire Festival quest and got some ridiculous looking shoulders, which I guess will keep my ears warm if anything. Pretty much all the quests in this event has you going around the world clicking different bonfires. Some of them are located in really high level zones, but at least they give a lot of XP. Enough for us to get to level 20, which is where most of the Duskwood quests become unlocked. This zone is one of my personal favorites and there was actually quite a lot of quests I was able to do here. I would actually say that it's a close second to Darkshore in terms of quest amounts. Level 20 is also where you unlock a quest chain called Speaking of Fortitude that begins in Stormwind. Normally I would never do this quest because it has you running all over the place, including Northshire Abbey, and it's just not really efficient in terms of XP per hour. But I guess that's one of the fun things about this challenge, is it got me to explore some quests that I had previously never done before. Another quest that unlocks at level 20 is the second Paladins quest chain, but unfortunately we're only able to do the first couple of quests of this one. Out of curiosity, I looked up some of the other class quests while editing this, and it does seem like Warrior is able to get the most amount of XP out of their class quests, with Paladin being a close second. Part of the reason why is because the 2 blacksmithing quests we're able to do is only available to Paladins, Warriors and Rogues. Which I guess kind of makes sense, although the profession itself does not have class limitations, so I'm not sure why the quests would. Even weirder is that there is one quest that rogues can't do, but druids can for whatever reason. But anyway, moving on, I'm now able to do my first dungeon quest, which is just 2 short hand-ins in Blackfathom Deeps. And if you're confused how I did this, I simply had my ult clear out the dungeon for me before I joined the group. Also had a bunch of new quests unlocked in Ashenvale since the last time I was there, and with those quests plus a bit of exploring I was able to make it to 22, which unlocks the Stalwon quest chain in Duskwood, and this is great cause this chain is really big and we're able to do all of the quests except for the very last one. There are these ghost mobs that will spawn throughout, but you don't have to kill them, you can simply just run away from them. Also, the story of this quest line is somewhat interesting in a messed up sort of way. I would definitely recommend doing it if you haven't. But now it's time to do the second set of dungeon quests, this time in Gnomeregan. The first quest is a Escort quest, and there was actually a non-elite mob that respawned during it, but luckily the NPC did not attack it and I was able to survive long enough to finish the quest. For the second quest, you have to collect radioactive fallout from any of the green looking mobs. All you have to do is target the mob and click the quest item. At first I tried to solo this, but even with bubble I only had 1 try per life. So eventually I gave up and just had my ult tanking them while I spammed the quest item over and over again until it finally worked. At this point I was starting to run low on quests. I did the Arate Basin quest, which is pretty much the same as the Warstone Gulch one, and then a short one in Wetlands, but this wasn't nearly enough to get me to 23, and worse yet is that there isn't any new quest that unlocks at 23 either. This meant I had to rely solely on exploration XP to get me all the way to level 24. And even at 24, there was only a handful of new quests I was able to do, and it wasn't gonna be enough to get me through the level, not even close actually. This meant going back to exploring once again, but pretty quickly I ran out of zones to explore and it still wasn't quite enough to get me to 25. The War Effort event was going on at the time, but there was only 1 small quest I could get out of that. Luckily though, it was also Darkmoon Faire week, which meant that I could do the Fortune quests. If you were ever in a raiding guild in Classic WoW, you're probably familiar with the fortune teller in Darkmoon Faire because of the various buffs that he provides. But along with that buff, he will also give you a random fortune. There's 29 different ones, and out of those 29 there are 4 that will start a quest. problem is that all 4 of them each have less than 2% chance of dropping, and just like with the buff, you can only get one of these fortunes every 4 in-game hours. So as you can imagine, it took me quite a while to get all 4. I believe my total was around 70, but I'm not sure because I did delete some of them. Also, keep in mind that the Darkmoon Faire is only active for 1 week of each month, and half of the time it's located in Mulgore, which means there's a bunch of Horde around constantly trying to kill me. All of these quests will have you collect a chest of some sort. There's one in Mulgore, one in Elven Forest, one in Dead Mines, and one in Valen Caverns. Sadly, they all give pretty mediocre XP, and it wasn't gonna be enough to get me to 25. Luckily though, I discovered that I had another quest I could do called Blue Leaf Tubers. I had previously overlooked this quest because when I looked it up on Wowhead, it said that the quest items dropped off a mob. Which is not true, they drop from these flowers you can spawn in yourself inside Razorfen Crawl. This quest did give a lot of XP, but I was still a tiny bit off from hitting 25, but I knew what I had to do to get there. And that would be the Gurubashi Arena quest. Every 3 hours, a chest spawns in the arena that contains an item that will start a quest. Problem is, it's under constant control by different twin guilds, and I had to pay one of them off just to have a chance. But eventually I got it, and I was finally able to hit level 25, unlocking a bunch of new quests, and I'm just kidding, I'm 7 XP off. Turns out the quest only gives 550 XP, even though on Wowhead it was listed as giving 560 XP. Luckily, I had still yet another backup plan. You see, there's actually a second Arati Basin quest that I had intentionally been holding off on, because it's one of the few quests that actually scales with your level, meaning the higher level you are, the more XP you get out of it. The quest itself is pretty easy. All you have to do is cap each base once. And with that done, I was finally able to hit 25, for real this time, and there's a ton of quests that unlock at this level, and I'm able to do the majority of them, and it's gonna be enough to get me all the way to 26 actually. But as you can probably tell, I am starting to approach the limit of this challenge. I don't have too much to say about the level 25 quests. There is a Warlock quest chain that leads to a pretty memorable hat, and for whatever reason, the first 2 quests of this chain does not actually require you to be a Warlock. You go to Wetlands to collect some weird herb, and then you gotta poison someone with it because they're trying to shut down whatever shady stuff is going on in the Warlock basement. There's also a Wetlands quest that have you collect stones for this statue maker guy that likes to bring his hammer with him everywhere. What the shit is he doing? But now, going into level 26, it's gonna get really difficult again because there's only a handful of quests that unlock at this level. We have the Donation of Silk quests, which are great, pretty much the same thing as the Wool quests, but after that we're left with only 2 short quests, one in Ashenvale and one in Arati Highlands, and once I had turned those in, there really wasn't anything left for me to do except just wait around for the next seasonal event to happen, which would be the Halloween event. There's 3 quests I can do in this event. For the first one, you just have to scout out the Horde Wickermen outside of Undercity. For the second quest, you have to clean up some stink bombs in Southshore. These are caused by Horde players, which is why this quest technically counts as a PvP quest and it gives a lot of XP. Third quest starts in the Stormwind Orphanage. You have to go around to the innkeeper of each capital city and perform different emotes in exchange for candy. And with the third quest done, all we can do now is go back to waiting again for the next event to happen. Luckily for you though, by the power of editing, you won't even have to wait for me to finish this sentence. The next event is Winter Rail. Not a lot to say about this one. There's 4 short quests that all take place inside Ironforge. For one of the quests, you have to bring some cookies and milk to Great Father Winter, and for the other 3 quests, you basically just have to go around and talk to some people. Pretty boring quests, and none of them offer much in terms of XP. Obviously there are more quests to this event, but none that I'm able to do, so let's just move on to the next event, which is going to be the Lunar Festival. And this event actually manages to be even worse somehow. There's only a small 3 quest chain that we can do, and the first 2 quests of that chain don't actually offer any XP. All you have to do is buy some rockets, blow them up, and then take a portal to Moonglade to hand in the final quest. Even though this event is really bad in terms of XP, it's still not the worst one because there are actually a couple events that don't offer any XP at all. But on the flip side, we have Children's Week, which has a bunch of quests that we can do. The entire event is basically about fulfilling wishes of the orphan kids. For the first 3 quests, you have to go visit the lighthouse in Westfall, the dam in Loch Modan, and also the bank in Darnassus. After that, you will unlock 2 new quests. One of them is to get an autograph from Jaina, and the other one is to get some ice cream from a vendor in Stormwind. After you've done all of that, you can hand in the last quest at the orphanage and also get the best pet in the game, Speedy the turtle. But now I was completely out of event quest and I was still a bit short of 27. Once again I had to go back and see if maybe there was a quest that I had overlooked. This brought me to the Razorfin Crawl Escort, which previously I had assumed would be impossible for me to do, because there are in fact mobs that spawn during the escort that have to be killed. But I figured out a really simple workaround for this, which was simply to just leave the group during those parts and then get invited back afterwards, completely avoiding the mob XP but still leaving me eligible to turn in the quest. This quest gave a lot of XP, but still not quite enough to get me all the way there. But once again I had yet another trick up my sleeve. You are probably familiar with the Darkmoon Faire decks that you can turn in for level 60 trinkets. But what you might not know is that these quests are doable at any level and do actually offer a little bit of XP. Not nearly enough to be worth it, mind you. These were all really expensive to get, especially the Beast deck. It's probably safe to say that no one else in WoW history has ever spent this much gold on 2k XP. Worst part is that this was still not enough and I was now 400 XP away from leveling. Of course, I already knew ahead of time that this would happen, and I did have somewhat of a plan, even though it was not a very good one. My original idea was to grind out the reputation with the 2 battleground factions, as both of them award you 210 XP for reaching friendly, which meant 420 XP combined. But pretty quickly I realized that Alliance was not doing too well in this bracket, and after repeatedly losing all of my matches, I had to accept that this was not going to work. I needed to find another way, but I had no idea how, and I started looking through some of my previous recordings, desperately trying to find something, anything that could help me. And eventually I did. I noticed during my exploring that there would occasionally be these sub-areas that would give exploration XP even though they didn't actually reveal anything new on the map. And I realized that there could be more areas like this that I have yet to explore. The problem is finding them, because like I said, they're not indicated on the map in any way, and even though I tried really hard, I was not able to find anything about them on the internet either. This only left me with one option, which was to aimlessly wander around different zones that I had already explored, without a mount mind you, hoping that I might accidentally stumble across one of these sub-areas. And after a lot of struggling I was finally able to find them. One of them in Duskwood and the other one in Arati Highlands. And finally I had reached level 27. As you might have guessed, this is as far as this challenge will go. There's no more quests that unlock at 27, so I literally have no way of getting past this level without killing mobs. But honestly, I'm kind of surprised that I was even able to get this far. I kind of went into this challenge blindly and had really no idea what to expect. And even though it took a lot longer than I had originally anticipated, it was a pretty fun challenge. But that's it for this video. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one, which I'm sure will be something equally as stupid. Look at him go. He's so fast. He's so fast.